Hi there, Dave Levine here. Thanks for joining me for episode 16 of the Sports Stories podcast. Bob Reeves was with us last week, sharing many stories, including those of Norman Hunter and Bill Shankly, and how they impacted on teams and developed as people and players. Well, today's special guest is Arran Pugh, the Academy Operations and Performance Manager at Exeter City. Arran also has a significant role to play in the development of young people and players, which I'm really looking forward to hearing. I'm also looking forward to hearing Arran's story from being an aspiring professional footballer to overseeing the running of the academy at Exeter City, which is unique in that it's a trust-directed club. Given Arran's ambition, I'm sure this won't be the last time we hear from him and the great work he is doing. I would therefore like to wish a very warm welcome to today's special guest, Exeter City Academy Operations and Performance Manager, Mr. Arran Pugh. Arran, it's really great to have you with me on the Sports Stories podcast today. Thanks very much for joining me. I'm absolutely delighted to have you on today and really excited to talk to you because with the title of Academy Operations and Performance Manager at Exeter City, and therefore one of the youngest academy managers in the country, I think it's going to be a fantastic conversation, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the journey you've both been on, but also some of the great things that you're doing down at the club. Just to kick us off, and what I generally like to do is to introduce my guests. Rather than me do that, can you just give us a little bit of a sense of the journey you've been on, but possibly starting with maybe your first memory of being involved in sports?
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I do really appreciate the opportunity. So thanks for that, David. But I guess first memory of sport was probably back when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And I remember World Cup '94 being on. Particularly memorable because England weren't there, but we were supporting Ireland in England's absence, and I just absolutely loved it. And my family weren't particularly big football fans, so I didn't get it from them, but absolutely loved it, and kind of went back to primary school after the summer, and just played as much as I could, and I think just really fell in love with the game, and you know, that kind of feeling of scoring a goal is always, you know, there's no better feeling. Everyone says that, but that was the case. And I think it also helps when you're not bad at something. So luckily, naturally, I wasn't too bad, and had a bit of success at school. And so so that made it a little bit better as well, I guess.
I always love it when somebody gets enthused and inspired by a World Cup or a big event like that, and then really starts off their passion and interest in the sport. Where did you go from there then in terms of your career in sport, or particularly football?
So I guess it started to become a bit more serious when I got to about 12. So at 12 years old, I'd be playing kind of local grassroots football and had the opportunity to come up to Exeter and had a trial at Exeter City, and their centre of excellence at the time were just kind of starting to have some younger age groups. And was fortunate enough to be selected and spent 5 years at the academy, or Centre of Excellence as it was at the time, and absolutely loved it. Really enjoyed my time, had some fantastic people working with me in terms of coaches, made some brilliant friends, and that kind of was a fantastic time. And then at under 16s at the time, when you're normally offered a scholarship, I had some pretty unfortunate growth issues. So I went from being about 5'11" to 6'4", 6'5" in a very short period of time, and really kind of struggled with coordination and technique went out the window, and it was a difficult time, and rightfully so. I wasn't offered a scholarship at that point, and that was the right thing at that time. And so from there, I went into the local college, the college program, and did a football program there, and started coaching as well. So that's where I started to have an interest in coaching, initially with the football in the community set up at Exeter. And that was a really good grounding to try and get a grasp of working with young players and kind of behaviour management and trying to make it fun as well, I think, which is always a really important part of coaching. And then at 18, I had the opportunity to start as a part-time coach with the academy. And that was my first introduction really to Exeter City Academy. And 14 years later, I'm still there. So I'm very much a one club man. and obviously that has its limitations, but certainly at the same time, I've loved every minute, and I think that it's been a really good place to learn, develop. The opportunities available have been fantastic. So and that's entailed, initially starting as a part-time coach, going into a full-time role a couple of years later as, at the time, the technical development officer. From there, I became foundation phase lead coach, academy operations manager, assistant academy manager, and now into my current role. So I feel like I've had a really good experience of many of the roles within the academy, and that's been really beneficial in really kind of knowing the ins and outs of the club, really.
So Arran, I'm really curious about that kind of experience that you had as a player coming through that sort of puberty and growth spurt. And also you obviously had an experience as being a coach in that age bracket as well. What did you pick up as a player that you're now kind of used as a coach, do you think? Because that's a really difficult period to go through. And clearly, you mentioned that it was difficult for you and how you were managed. And I'm wondering how your experiences as a player informed or influenced how you were a coach in that age range.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, I actually felt that I was kind of looked after really well at Exeter, and I didn't really have any resentment when I wasn't offered a scholarship, because I knew it was the right decision at that time. But there was still lots of support provided to me, and the coaches at the time, one of them being Eamonn Dolan, I'm sure I'll come on to it a bit later, was just a fantastic man and a brilliant part of my younger life, really. So supportive, so helpful, always trying to kind of keep you positive, and so that was massively helpful. And I think now as a coach, I'm very aware of late developers and young players that may be going through difficult growth spurts, and trying to make sure that the other academy coaches and staff are aware of that. And I think it's more kind of commonplace these days, and there is more understanding of it. But certainly it's something that we really look to have an idea of and take real care of these boys, because it is a difficult period, and I know that from personal experience. So yeah, it's not kind of giving up on players too early. I think giving them time, giving them opportunity, and supporting them the best you can through that period.
I'm also really aware that, our experiences through football, and somebody who's aspiring to be a professional and then not getting a contract. I know you said it was the right decision, but clearly, at that stage, a dream is shattered in some ways if you don't kind of follow the traditional path. And I'm wondering what that gave you as a coach and as a person. What did you learn from that experience that's really helped you drive on?
Yeah, I mean, just to be honest, I still felt that I had a chance. So at kind of 16, 17, I went to college and did a college program. And then when I left college, I actually spent a year doing a lot of part-time coaching and not a full-time job, because I wanted to spend time during the day trying to be as fit as I could, practice and work hard to kind of get up the footballing non-league ladder, really. So, and I got up to the conference south of Truro and spent a lot of years there with those guys. And I'm kind of proud of that achievement. I think that was, about the right level for me. But certainly it didn't put me off straight away. I felt I could still keep going and still trying to get there. But certainly that, I think taking everything that you've learned and all your experiences and trying to pass them on to other people has been really important. And there's going to be adversity in any young player's career and in their path to wherever they're going to get. And it's trying to use those to make them stronger. And certainly I think I could have backed myself a little bit more and had more confidence in my own ability. And I think that's something that's taken a long time. I think even now it's something that I've only kind of recently got a little bit better with. So I think that's been really, really important, something that I would definitely try and pass on to other staff and certainly the players.
And I've kind of picked up on the idea about how do you deal with that adversity. And you've shown a mindset there. Look, I want a career or I want a direction in football. And I drove it back even through the non-league system to come back. You said, I never let my sort of hope drop. Where did that drive come from?
I guess probably parents. My mum in particular is incredibly driven personality. And so if I wanted to do something, she would support me in whatever way I could to do that. So whether that's kind of driving, for a long period we lived in Cornwall, and so driving to Plymouth, to Exeter, all over the southwest to get me to places, but also kind of making sure that I do put my my best foot forward. So I remember actually one point when I was about 11 going down to this development centre in Plymouth, and I've been going for a few weeks, and I was, at that point, I was quite a good young player, but I didn't know anyone there. I was the only boy from Launceston in Cornwall that was going, and I was just kind of turning up. I wasn't really showing what I could do. And when it comes to the games at the end, they go, "Oh, just you go in defence, and I'll just take it." I was quite a nice young boy, and just accepted it. And I was on the way home one, and I remember really clearly her actually making me cry, just saying, "Look, I'm not going to keep taking you down here if you're not going to show what you can do. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of my time. You've got so much more than what you're actually showing, and you need to do that." And actually, from that point forward, the next week we went down there, and I said that, a bit tentatively, "Oh, can I? I'm going to go and play midfield this game," and got on the ball and show what I could do. And I think it was literally a couple of months later after that I was getting trials at professional academy. So that actual, I guess a little bit of a kick up the bum from my mum, and just kind of making me put myself out there a little bit more has been really important, and that's kind of stayed with me throughout. And certainly, there's been other instances since then. So I remember not getting onto the UEFA B course initially when I was, I think, about 19, and rather than just saying, "Okay, I've not got it and have to wait a year," she said, "Well, why are you just going to give up?" So I called them and said, "Look, I really need to get on this course. It's really important to me." And I got on the course. So if I hadn't made that call, I wouldn't have had that qualification so early. And even with kind of non-league managers, if I wasn't playing, then I'd go and talk to them and say, "What do I need to do? I want to play. Tell me what I need to do." And actually having that voice, I think, has been so important, and that has definitely come from mum, bless her. So.
That's fantastic. And Arran, I wondered, do you have a saying or a motto or a phrase which drives you forward? Because I'm picking up a kind of a principle or a philosophy of yours going forward here, and I'm wondering what drives you. Do you have something that helps you?
One thing that really sticks in my mind, I think, and again, it's from Eamonn Dolan, actually. So when I was quite young, and it's typical Eamonn, really. But he always said, "The harder I work, the luckier I get." And I think that sums it up really quite nicely. If you really want to do something, you want to be successful in something, you put the work in, you're going to have more opportunity, you have more chance, and that's kind of stuck with me, I think, throughout my kind of time as a football player and as a coach, and now in my current role. And also, it's kind of also moulded a little bit as well the academy's must-haves. So we'll probably talk about that a bit later, but work rate is an essential ingredient of kind of what we try and instill in our young players. So, and that's really derived from Eamonn, really, if I'm being honest.
Wow. And then in terms of using that philosophy, can you share with our listeners an experience where you've really been very successful and you can relate it back to, actually, this is why I was successful. I worked really hard and I was really lucky, but actually you weren't so lucky, you were just successful. Something went really well for you.
There's not, I guess, a particular individual particular moment. I think certainly when I was kind of, that period of 16 to 19, 20, when I was going through a bit of that growth period, and I wasn't particularly naturally gifted at running, for instance, and technically, I was okay, but I could be a lot better. So I remember just spending hours going out and running when I hated it, or practicing, heading the ball and passing and ball striking, and that kind of, I think that really helped me to go from starting men, my kind of time playing men's football in the Devon League with Alphington at a very modest level, all the way to kind of one of the higher levels of non-league football, just for that kind of time and effort that was put in doing things that I necessarily didn't particularly enjoy, but it was going to allow me to get to where I wanted to go.
Gosh. So a really strong philosophy there in terms of really working hard, putting the effort in here. I hear in terms of, look, these are areas which I know will help me, but I don't like doing, but I must put the effort and the energy into them to really move me forward. Yeah. And then taking that through your career, you know, you went from working on yourself in terms of a footballer, doing little bits of coaching and so on, getting some opportunities within the club. But then you've really moved your career on, haven't you? So how did that progress into the role within the academy to become, as you are today, the academy manager?
To be honest, it's quite a natural progression. And you know, when I first started coaching, I didn't have in my mind that, look, I want to be an academy manager. It wasn't something that, and sometimes I kind of worry a little bit that potentially when I kind of see some of the other guys that work at our club that are fantastic, you know, people like Wayne Carlisle and Dan Green in the first team step and Matt Taylor, they're so driven and they're so clear on what they want and where they want to go. And sometimes I worry that I don't have that clear drive as I want to be this. But at the same time, I'll work as hard as I can at whatever I'm doing at that point, and naturally kind of opportunities have opened up. So quite a short time after I started full time at the academy, Simon Hayward, who was at the time the academy manager and had done a really fantastic job at taking over from what Eamonn had started and kind of progressing the academy, he kind of sat me down and said, you know, no disrespect to anyone else that's kind of worked with us before, but you're the first person that I've seen that I think could take over from me when I move on, whenever that might be, in terms of the way that you approach things. So straight away, that kind of was obviously a bit of a boost, but also I guess put it into my mind that eventually that could be something that I would want to do. And you know, the main reason that I got into football is because I enjoyed playing it. Then I really enjoyed coaching it. And as an academy manager or operations performance manager, is my title, is you do a lot less of the coaching than you'd probably like to. You know, I still try and find time to do that, but it's a lot more about, you know, there is a lot of admin involved, but there's also a lot of time spending working with people and trying to help the staff. And that's kind of the thing that I've found I really enjoy now, is actually spending time with each of the staff in their different areas and trying my best to try and help them how I can. And that's been really, really enjoyable. So it's not something I ever thought I'm going to be an academy manager, but I've kind of almost fallen into it. And through the bits that I've done, I guess some decent work and that work ethic to get here. And now it's trying to be the best I can be in this current role, I guess.
Yeah. And you mentioned Simon and Eamonn and the impact that they've had on you, and you know, set the foundations for you. What have you taken from them? What guidance and what tips and what's really informed the way you are from them, working with them?
I mean, I think you take different things from everyone, and you know that you probably couldn't have two more different people than Simon and Eamonn, really. But they were both fantastic in their own way. So I think I always want to be myself. I have a real difficulty in kind of trying to be something that I'm not, and sometimes I find that that's been, you know, again, a question mark in the back of my mind is, you know, if you are supposedly like the leader of the academy and you know you're trying to support these staff, but I don't want to try and be something, I want to be myself within that. So you know, I try and I guess take some bits from Eamonn in terms of, you know, the rapport he had with players and staff, and you know how caring he was. He would always challenge you. He'd always make things difficult, but you knew that he cared. And one of the things, you know, one of our sayings at the academy is, you know, the players won't care what you know until they know that you care. And I think that's massive, and certainly something that again would reinforce that. And then in terms of Simon, just the way that he kind of was so organised, was so, you know, always looking to learn new things and read new books and try and have a real clear vision for the academy. So when I first started as a part-time coach at 18, I remember sitting down in the first presentation that was done for the staff, the CPD, and it was a case of, you know, why are we here? And the next slide was to create professional football players. And then the next slide after that was not a badge for Exeter City, it was a badge of Man United, Chelsea, Inter Milan, Real Madrid, all these huge clubs. And back at that point, although the academy, the Exeter was a good community club, that hadn't had loads of players that had got through the academy. It was a decent amount, but not loads. And the idea was that, yes, if we can create players for Exeter City, fantastic, what an achievement. But the aim should be to try and create players for and produce players for the Premier League, the Champions League, internationals. And at the time, we all were like, yeah, that's brilliant, we love that. But it was a long way off. And more recently, we've had players like Ethan Ampadu that went to Chelsea, that's played in the Champions League. And so, that was clearly, that vision and that idea of where we were going was really important, and is something that we try and now, I guess, move on to the next level again.
So here's the tough question, Arran. How do you create players for those teams at Exeter City?
It's not one big thing. I think it's so many small things all combined together. Like I said, there's been a really clear vision for the academy and for the club. The Exeter being a trust-owned club, it means that the values of kind of opportunity, development, community are massive, and it's really set up to really support the academy, and the academy is such an important part of that club, because there's no huge benefactor and someone that's putting lots of money into the club. So we have to try and give opportunities to youngsters, and then hopefully that brings returns into the club. So that clear vision, the fact that the club is so supportive and there is a real clear pathway for the players. I think continuity, in one way is really important. So if you look at many of the staff in the academy over the last 10 years have been players in the academy or players in the first team. And so those key messages and those key philosophies that have been in place keep getting carried forward and brought back, alongside obviously bringing new people in as well, because I think a mixture of the two is really important, so you do continue to have new ideas. We're certainly not trying to say we've got it cracked, we're standing still now, because if you're standing still, you're moving backwards. So we're keen always to look at new things, and I think that the club's probably been quite forward thinking. People like Julian Tagg, who's leading the whole club, quite a very forward thinking person, and I think the club's probably been ahead of the curve a little bit for quite a long time. I think with the introduction of the EPPP, I think some of the other Category 3 clubs have probably got themselves closer to where Exeter were 6-7 years ago. And so now it's our challenge to kind of push on again and make sure that we keep getting better.
What are some of the challenges that you would face, do you think, going forward? Because, we're coming into a very different world now. Football's evolving at a pace. What challenges do you envisage?
I mean, obviously there's going to be financial implications. So it's trying to be as kind of innovative as you can. So we try and be innovative with everything we do anyway, but trying to maximize what you can do with the resources you have available. I think that's going to be really important. I mean, in terms of our innovation, we try and have as much contact time with the players as we possibly can, and it's something that when we said a few years, well, it was a good few years ago now, but we're going to do 3-hour sessions. We had kind of players and parents like gasping, like, how are you going to do 3-hour sessions? That's crazy. But the way that actually they're structured with lots of different parts, it's not all on pitch. You've got sports hall sessions and S&C sessions and analysis sessions. The time flies and the players adapt to it so quickly. So I think ensuring that we continue to have that contact time with the players, which is so important. I think continuing to kind of stretch the high performing players. So, hopefully all the players in the academy have got potential, and certainly, although our ethos is that school and education and home life comes first, and producing well-rounded young people is the most important thing. At the end of the day, we're there to create professional players. So those players that are really kind of performing at a high level, we're trying to stretch them by playing them up in older age groups. We've had numerous examples of players playing up 2 age groups if necessary to really stretch them. And really having variety in the program as well. So I read an article recently about AZ Alkmaar in Holland, and how they were seen as maybe one of the best academies in Europe, and for the results of lots of players in the first team and being successful was great. And I was reading the article about how they they felt they were really innovative, and it was. But I also read it thinking, oh, we do that, and we do that, and so, you know, this idea of having, you know, almost like a performance playground, especially at the younger ages, to give the players responsibility and decision-making opportunities, and you know, we're definitely huge on that, and variety in the program in terms of different sports we do, lots of different surfaces. So we have 3G, we play on sand-based astro, we go in the sports hall, which is a massive part of our program, you know, as well as the grass pitches. We've done beach football more recently, so that variety, and also the variety in formations as well. So for every 6 weeks, our young players will change formation, and again, that kind of comes back to that initial thing of, yes, if we can create players for Exeter City, fantastic, but also if we can create players and produce players and develop players for the highest level, or who knows what Man City are going to be playing at that time, who knows what Liverpool, etc. So the boys have a real clear understanding of different ways of playing and different formations within, you know, the kind of key playing philosophy at the club of keeping the ball, maintaining possession, playing at a high intensity. Then I think they're set up as well as they possibly can be.
And I really like that philosophy in terms of preparing the player to be able to play for whichever manager or whichever club they might end up at, and, you know, bringing that level of agility and flexibility into their style. So, you know, creating players that need to be able to think and adapt to different environments. I think so really, really interesting, and for me, quite a forward-thinking approach, which I think I'd applaud. You mentioned a bit earlier on a little bit around the must-haves. Can you tell us a little bit more, based on what you've just said, what the Exeter City must-haves are?
Yeah, of course. So we have kind of must-haves for the players in particular, which are key and have been a big part of what we do. But we also have must-haves for the coaches, right, and for the parents. So there's kind of different things that we feel that are essential for having a really positive learning environment and being collaborative in what we do, and making sure that the boys can maximise their potential. So again, it's in some ways, when we look at it, it's really quite simple and doesn't seem to be kind of revolutionary or anything, but we've really found it's been a massive kind of part of the players' development. So again, I remember, again, probably 6-7 years ago, we would play some of the kind of London teams or kind of inner city teams, and we'd always kind of get, I guess, beat up a little bit. You know, we'd be kind of nice boys from Exeter, and so one of the things we were conscious to do was to try and make the boys a bit more competitive and a bit more, front foot and kind of really kind of stick up for themselves. So we want to make it nice and snappy. So we kind of came up with this ABC+WR, and it was a case of the things that we think the players have to show and what every player can show for every training session, every game. So attitude, bravery, and when we say bravery, we talk about bravery to get on the ball, bravery to try things, bravery to be creative, competitiveness, so wanting to be the most competitive player, punching above your weight, things like that. Work rate, obviously, which I kind of touched on already, and then reactions in terms of reacting positively and quickly, whether we've just lost the ball or we've just won the ball. So those must-haves are ingrained and instilled in all of the players, and we go so far as to say that when the players are kind of almost given ratings, they can get a 6 out of 10 if they just do those things right. You know, they could give the ball away every time they get it, but if they've had a fantastic attitude, they've been brave to get the ball and get on the ball and try things, they've been as competitive as they can be at all times, worked hard and shown positive reactions, well, that's a really good base to work from. And generally what you find is if the boys are nailing those things, then everything else comes off the back of that. So really kind of getting the players right with those real key things, essentials, almost like player essentials when they play, things that they should focus on are really important. So the coaches are very clear on the importance of ensuring that the players' ABCs, the must-haves, are shown as the kind of most important and initial part of any session or game. So they'll really drive those must-haves and, you know, drive it through encouraging good examples, requesting kind of better examples from those that maybe aren't quite shown what they. So it's really key that, say, we get the players right before we start coaching them technical and tactical details. So yeah, and hopefully that kind of brings a real intensity to sessions and games and ensures that we're at the right level to really start stretching the boys and adding that further detail.
So it sounds like the ABC and WR nearly are foundational, aren't they? If you get those, and then you can build the football technical, tactical aspects on top of that.
Definitely, and it's like I say, it's really shown real effects. So I'm sure they won't mind me saying, but Swansea. So Swansea were a team that in the past, like I said, 6-7 years ago, would come down and we used to get kind of beat up by them. And then a couple of years ago, they came down to play us in pre-season. Obviously, they're now a different category to us. But and I remember their coach saying, "I love coming down here to play you guys because it's a bit different. Like your boys are so competitive. We don't get to see this very often. They really give us a good good competitive game." And so it completely swung around from where we were, and that was based on those must-haves. And I think the other thing is the sports hall sessions that we do. They're so intense. The ball doesn't go out of play. We just, it's winner stays on. Sometimes we do variety in there, but winner stays on, ball stays in the pitch. Players go around kicking each other, but in an appropriate way. And it's just been those two things, I think, have really started to make our boys a bit tougher and a bit more competitive.
Yeah. Can you give us an insight into what the must-haves would be for the coaches and the parents? Because I really like the idea that you're kind of giving a foundation to all areas of the club, all the different roles that people play.
Of course, yeah. So again, we try and have like something that's snappy, a bit of an acronym. So for the coaches, it's IDOCARE. And so inspirational, detailed, organised, consistent, adaptable, respectful, and engaging. So what we try and say is, if you're a member of staff and you're putting on a session or whatever it is, working with the players, try and hit as many of those things as you can. Try and plan to be inspirational. Try and be adaptable. So if 2 players don't turn up to training that you're expecting, that you've got a second plan that can come into place. They're the things that consistency with messages, the key messages that we've got in the academy, make sure that they're kind of used all the time. So that's for the staff, and then for the parents, it's just care a little bit. So collaboration, appreciation, respect, and expectation. So again, it's more about those parents. We try and make it very clear at the very start that not every player is going to be a professional football player, unfortunately. So those expectations need to be managed quite clearly. But what we will guarantee is we'll do our very best to provide a really enjoyable experience during the boys' time with us. And also we will help them get better. Now, at the end of that, as long as they've enjoyed it and they've got better, we've done our bit. And that's kind of, how we see it. And I think because we make that really clear at the start, it tends to negate any potential issues when players do unfortunately become released or leave the academy, because we've clearly outlined what we are going to provide, and generally, I think we are very good at providing what we say we're going to provide. You're still always going to get some disappointment, of course, because no parent wants to see their child upset and that they haven't ultimately got to the level they want to get to. But overall, I think it's a much smoother process because they know that we've done what we said we would do.
Do you use the acronym of CARE with the parents up front? So you're quite bold and overt about it, because I guess that relationship, especially when you're coming towards, retain and release conversations with players and parents, is potentially a tricky conversation to have. And I'm just conscious about how to best navigate and manage that. You're giving me a real sense that it's not necessarily always easy, but you've actually managed the journey quite well to try and make it as fluid and as productive as it can be. And I'm just wondering, how do you use the acronym or the models that you use?
Yeah, so I mean, it's something that we will deliver every single year in the kind of parent inductions. That message, again, come back to consistency. There'll be new things that we kind of present each year, but that one, in terms of the parent must-haves and being collaborative and working together, and those parent must-haves, that will be delivered every single year, within reviews as well. So obviously we do kind of, as per any other academy, regular player and parent reviews, and we'll always come to the players and parents first and let them have their voice and their say, and really show that we are respectful and collaborative, and we want to kind of join, have their thoughts and their input, because at the end of the day, the parents are going to have the biggest impact on their son. You know, we hopefully can have a really positive impact, but the most important person in pretty much every young player's life is their parents and guardians. So it's really important that we work together, and we have an analogy of kind of everyone in the boat rowing in the same direction. And if someone's rowing in an opposite direction, it's going to cause some trouble. So yeah.
Great stuff. And you sound like you're doing some fantastic work, you know, and really trying to move the ship forward, as you say, or with the boat in one direction together. Just before we start drawing it to a close, and I want to ask you some real sort of detailed questions. I'm just conscious that where we started was with you being with this grand title of Academy Operations and Performance Manager, which sounds like it's doing absolutely everything, and also being one of the younger academy managers. And I'm just wondering, how does that work for you?
I mean, yeah, it's a challenge, and I think one of in some ways, it's been a real positive, but also I guess there's been a kind of worry or self-doubt of mine, is because many of the guys that are still at the academy I've worked alongside in the past, and I think I've built good relations with. So when I first kind of, you know, when Simon moved on, I was all of a sudden in this kind of more of a leadership role. It's a case of, well, these guys, they all know me kind of inside out. They know what I'm like, and you know, is that respect going to be there? Because you know, I can have a laugh and a joke, and I'm not really one to rant and rave. You know, I'm quite quiet and calm in a lot of ways, I guess. So I worried a little bit about whether or not the kind of, I guess respect would be there in terms of, you know, who am I? I'm just a 30-year-old at that point, never made it as a professional player, done a bit of coaching and has done the roles that a lot of these guys have done. But I guess I've just tried to be myself with it. And although it was a real worry to start with, I mean, actually quite recently, there's a bit of a kind of light bulb moment. So one of our staff, who's Brad Miller, who's our foundation phase coach, he's fantastic. He's so good in his field. And he put on, I think it was going around the moment, but on Facebook, 3 people that have inspired you in your journey, and he put my name on there, and I was really surprised to see it. But it meant a lot to me, because it meant that actually this person that I think's fantastic and doing a fantastic job had actually taken a lot from me and what I'd done for him, and that wasn't me trying to be anything that I wasn't. I was just being myself. And so that actually gave me a bit more confidence and made me think, well, actually what I'm doing is obviously working, and trying to, I mean, we're really big on having this flatline management team. So all of the department leads, they will have the opportunity to kind of make their decisions and take it where they want to go. And obviously I'll, you know, the guys that I'm line manager for, I'll discuss that with them, and I'll have that. But you know, the head of sports science and medicine has far more knowledge in those areas than I do. So if I'm just a bit of a sounding board for them, and if I can ask questions to try and make sure they've thought things through, I don't need to be the one that knows the most about that. And likewise with the under 18s, I don't have to be the best under 18s coach or the one that knows the most about players of that age. As long as I'm allowing people to have that opportunity to kind of, and the responsibility to lead and kind of push them and question them and make sure they're happy, that works for me. So I know it may not work for everyone, but that's kind of the way that we've gone with it. And I've, like I said, despite the fact that many times I think, well, I don't know as much as he does, is that an issue? I don't think it is an issue, as long as you kind of, provide that opportunity and support where you can.
Great stuff, Arran. And I'm really conscious again of, you know, and probably the basis for my question was because there are so many times where, you know, we have to work alongside either peers and then take on a leadership role, and the dynamic and the relationships change. And for me, you've just given a really fantastic example whereby you were working alongside your colleagues and peers and then became into a leadership role, irrespective of what age you are and what your experience is, but you have to manage that in a really constructive way. And what's coming through loud and clear for me is that your leadership approach and philosophy around really trying to just be who you are, be myself. You know, you use that a number of times, and how it's working for you, and recognizing that you don't need to be the expert. You need to be the expert in getting the best out of people rather than the technical expert of doing the job that they're doing. And it sounds like from what you're saying, it's really coming through loud and clear. So it's leading me on now to short, sharp answers to some questions that will really help some of our listeners. So I'm going to fire a couple of quick fire questions at you. Okay. And I'm sure we'll open some of them up a little bit because I'm conscious that we might come to some areas around key influential people. So let's just go with it. The first question I'm going to ask you though is, can you name 2 or 3 key influential books or resources that you've used that really inspired you or informed you?
Yeah, so I think certainly kind of recent times in terms of looking at kind of leadership and kind of that side of things, which I probably didn't have loads of experience of. So the 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard, which is massively on situational leadership and kind of that's I kind of really relate to that, but also took bits from it to make, improve how I worked. Good to Great by Jim Collins, about kind of, I think, obviously when academy's doing well and then, Simon moves on and all of a sudden the responsibility is there, how do we make sure that it continues to get better? So, that was really good. I really enjoyed reading that. At the moment, I'm reading a book called How to Talk to Anyone, which is quite interesting. And again, just kind of different techniques and communication, because I don't think I always think that my communication skills could be a bit better. So that's one that I'm enjoying at the moment. So those would be ones I'd probably put forward.
Brilliant. Some great books. And I can really see the good to great sort of analogy and taking Exeter from where it was, not saying whether it was good or great, but keeping it moving in the right direction. I think it's really powerful. And I also really resonate with the idea of communication and that actually we can never be too good at it, I don't think. Irrespective of how good we think we are, I think we can always improve and sharpen our communication, questioning, listening kind of skills. Great books to share. Thank you for that. Given that the age we're in, in terms of different generations, I'm keen to know, what sort of technology do you use or would you not be without to help you be the best version of you?
It's nothing groundbreaking really on this one. I use Twitter a lot, and I know there's a lot of rubbish on Twitter, but there's also, I think, some fantastic things on Twitter. So some really good resources in terms of whether it's coaching, whether it's, again, leadership, quotes. I find Twitter really good. If you follow the right people on Twitter, I think it's a really useful resource. Again, not particularly exciting, but a couple of bits that I use. I've got a scan app on my phone, which I found invaluable. So being able to scan things, documents and things really quickly on my phone has been really, really good and useful, and then email them to myself. And again, quite a boring one, but this Adobe fill-in sign. So it allowing you to do electronic signatures, again, saved me so much time, especially in the modern age. And again, kind of electronically signing things and sending them back to me. So not particularly exciting, but they're probably the 3 that I use a lot.
And I asked the question because I think we're also awash with information nowadays, and we're also always looking for ways to be more effective or efficient in what we do. And we all have our own different ways, but it's useful to hear, no one's ever shared the Adobe fill and sign, but I can really see how in the role that you play, the things that we can speed up become more efficient and therefore more effective. So a great insight. In terms of the environment we're in as well, we've talked about the performance of individuals. You mentioned how you prepared yourself to try and be the best footballer you could be when you were younger. Arran, nowadays, what do you do to prepare yourself to be the best you possibly can, both mentally and physically?
So I think exercise is hugely important, and obviously my football was my big thing that I enjoyed. I actually find that whenever I play football now, I get backache. I don't know why. It's the one sport that I play, I get backache. So I try. I have to try and avoid playing anymore. But recently, I've got into running, which sounds crazy because, like I said earlier, I've always hated running. But trying get the Strava app and trying to get out and do a lot of running and improve personal bests, and having a bit of competition with my head of coaching that I work alongside, Kevin Nicholson. So we kind of do that. So I find that getting out early, first thing in the morning for a run, actually gives me a lot of energy and kind of invigorates for the rest of the day. And then I think any kind of time that there's a important meeting or piece of work that needs to be talking to people that talking through my ideas and finding their thoughts and kind of feedback on it. So again, I'm very fortunate, very lucky to have a lot of great people at the academy that I get on really well with, but also have real expertise, so I can bounce things off them. So I always find that there's lots of different people for different areas I would discuss things with. And again, the EAM program's been great because that's provided a mentor in terms of Gordon, who's been fantastic, Gordon Lord.
What is the EAM program for the guys that are listening in?
So the EAM program is the Elite Academy Managers course put on by the Premier League. So they've been running the Elite Head of Coaching EHOC course for a number of, I think it's 2 or 3 years now. So the last year and a half, the EAM program's come in, and it's a individualized course that really works on kind of my specific needs to make me the best potential academy manager that I can be. And there's been some really fantastic learning content and experiences, and probably, like I said, one of the most useful parts of it is having this mentor system. So Gordon Lord is my main mentor, and he's brilliant, in terms of listening to what I've got, poking and prodding me and trying to push me out of my comfort zone a little bit, which I've asked him to do, and get me to try things that maybe I wouldn't do without a little bit of a push.
Well, Arran, Gordon's a good friend of a Sports Stories podcast because he was the very first episode. So if people are interested to find out a little bit more about your mentor, Gordon, then they can go back and listen to that podcast. But
brilliant, yeah. I mean, and he is great, and I'm lucky because I've had lots of other people at the club. So again, Wayne at Carlisle, in terms of the assistant manager who I worked alongside before, has been brilliant. Julian, the chairman's always there and always has time, which I think we're very lucky to have at our club. You don't necessarily get that at most clubs. And we have an academy technical director, Richard Hodgson, who kind of lives up in Blackpool and kind of helps out on a part-time basis. But he's fantastic, and he's probably taught me a lot in recent years about kind of the operational side of things and really key things in terms of leadership. So again, that's been invaluable, really.
Well, I'm going to drill you down, and I'm going to take your lead there in sense of, those different people that have informed and supported you along the way, and ask you the question that Brad put to you earlier on around, actually, who would you say are the 2 or 3 people that have most influenced and inspired your career to date?
So again, I think I've mentioned it in a few different areas, but I think, again, my mum and dad, so parents, I've again been so lucky to have a real fantastic support network there with those guys, and they're both very different. Like my dad's spent so much time with me playing sports as a youngster, and he's always really supportive of things. And then on the other side, my mum, driving me around all over the country as a youngster, and then, like I said earlier, kind of being that person that again pushes me and makes sure that I do stick my neck out a little bit and don't just be accepting of things when they're not quite right. So those two definitely. Eamonn Dolan is the best coach I've ever worked with, and in those years when I was really starting to kind of learn a bit more about football, he was such an important person. And then I'd say probably in more recent time, probably Rich Hodgson has been really influential in my current position, and again, not afraid to make me realise I've got things to improve and push me, but also so supportive. I think those 3 probably.
Great, really, really powerful, and I'm with you in a sense of the foundation and the influence your parents can have in really helping you and supporting you and helping you fulfill your potential, actually. So good stuff. Moving on to a question that is one of my favourites, and I think given the journey you've been on and your aspiration to be involved in sport, and actually having stayed in sport as a player and a coach, and now and an academy manager, what advice would you give to a teenage version of yourself, or somebody who would want to come on your sort of journey?
I think, looking back, it probably would be like really believe in yourself and back yourself a bit more. Don't be afraid to kind of put yourself out there. Don't worry too much about what other people think about you. I think certainly teenagers, that's a massive part, worrying about what others think. But if I could go back, I'd probably worry less and just do what I need to do and really kind of, just back myself. So that's kind of probably where I'd go.
No, good. And we're living that one out now, and I can see how that's played through actually for you very, very powerfully in terms of actually the steps that you're taking. You've gone and knocked on doors, you've made phone calls to get on coaching courses, you've asked questions, and I can see how that's really played out very positively. And I think it's fantastic advice and guidance to younger people coming into the world of sport, that if you don't push doors and you don't ask questions, you never quite know what's out there for you. So some really great advice there. In terms of your sports story, you've been really open and honest about the journey you've gone on. And Arran, what I've really loved about it is you've been you. As you've said, your leadership style is trying not to be somebody else, it's trying to be you. And you've shown some of your vulnerabilities, your highs and your lows. A question I would throw to you though is, whose sports story would you be really keen to hear, and why?
It's a really, really good question, actually. It's probably a bit of a throwaway one, to be honest, but I think like Ronaldo, based on, again, going back to that work ethic. So, I know there's kind of stuff that's put out there about, Messi technically and, most gifted player, but the amount of work and effort and time and commitment that Ronaldo's put into becoming what he is. But just more detail, I guess, on that and really kind of finding what drove him and what just exactly how he applied himself, because I think that idea of creating what he's done through effort, work rate, time is really, really interesting.
Great. There's a real common theme for me from our whole conversations today, and that is around work ethic. And it's something that you've really showed and talked through, and and it keeps coming back, whether it's in other people, but actually also what you're bringing to the role that you've done, and also to the club itself, in the must-haves. So I just would like to really thank you for being with me today and giving me and our guests a real insight into what it's like at Exeter City, the work rate and the strides and the type of club and the culture and environment that you've created. So Arran, should any of the listeners like to find out a little bit more about your story from the past and anything that you're doing down at Exeter City, how might they maybe be able to make contact with you?
The kind of the best couple of ways, I guess, would be the website or Twitter. So the main club website, Exeter City website, has a link through to the academy, and that has initially some information about what we do on the main club website, and also a click through onto the academy website as well. So that's a good way. And then secondly, on Twitter, I'm not much for social media, but I do have a Twitter account. So again, we've got an academy Twitter account, which is at ECFC_academy. And we try and put as much content on there as we can weekly about what's going on. And then I'm on Twitter myself as well personally. So if you put my name in, I'm sure you'll be able to find me on there as well. So that's probably the best two ways.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I'm sure this won't be the last time we hear from you, given the great work that you're doing. So hopefully some people can drop you a line, make contact, and get engaged with what you're doing and the great stuff you're doing down at Exeter. So I'd just like to wish you the very, very best going forward with the journey. I hope at some stage we can keep coming back so you can share a little bit more of your journey, but also, wish you well in your personal journey in terms of where you go in your career as an operations manager, academy manager, or whatever you wish to be, and continue to be the very best person you can be, because that's one of your philosophies, and it's come out very strongly so far. And as a fresh pair of eyes in an industry that's ever so much changing, I really look forward to hearing where you get to. So Arran, thanks for being with me today. Good luck and take care.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Appreciate that.
So there we have the story and great insights into the life and role of the Exeter City Academy Operation and Performance Manager. It became clear that Arran really wants to be the best version of himself as the Academy Manager. The manner in which Arran delivered his message, his story, how he shared his highs and lows of his career also shows that he is driven and ambitious to be successful, while showing that caring for people is also important to him. This leads me to pose the following two questions to you. How do you show that you care so people care what you know? And also, If the harder you work, the luckier you get, then how hard do you work? And what do you need to put in place to become luckier? I do hope you enjoyed and valued the conversation today. There were some fantastic principles, and I know I'll be reflecting on the must-have acronyms he mentioned and see how they play out in the environments I work in. As always, please let us have any feedback. I do really appreciate it and continue to strive to offer you, the listener, a podcast of great value. You can make contact with me at the usual address, which is sportstories247@gmail.com. And also please do leave a review on your favourite podcast platform. This also helps new listeners find the podcast. All that it leaves me to say is, have a great week, look after yourself, and I look forward to having you join me, Dave Levine, again next week on the Sports Stories podcast.